From Chicago's CAN TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome to the show. Well, the bad news this week is that Groupon is ending all of its gun-related deals, so I guess that means I'm not going to be able to run over to Big Al's Gun Emporium and pick up my AR-15. I'm so disappointed about that because then I was hoping I'd get a second one for my wife at that 20% discount. But you know, the good news is that Groupon's PR people still have the ability to get their company into the news. They can piggyback onto pretty much anything that's in the news cycle that day, so things are still going well for them. Anyway, there may be good news for Cub fans, not necessarily baseball news, but business news. The comments that Joe Ricketts made about President Obama may have had a good effect. They got the mayor so mad that he scared him, and they came back with a way to pay for all the renovations to Wrigley Field themselves, but it's Wrigleyville, so there's going to be a lot of controversy, and we'll talk about that on the show today. Oh, and it also seems pretty clear now that in very short order, Midway is going to be run by a private corporation. Think maybe parking fees are going to go up? We'll talk about that and other things because we've got Hall Dardick back on the show today from Tribune, City Hall reporter. Glad to have you back again, Hal. And joining us for the first time, Ted Cox from DNA Info. Really happy to have you. You're our first DNA Info guest on the show.
Good to be here.
So we're glad to have you both here. So I wonder if we could just start with that story about Wrigley Field, because to me, it's an interesting story about our dynamic mayor, Hal. He may have handled this in a way that's a little different than the way he's handled things in the past. I mean, we've gotten used to these kind of like giving, you know, $50 million in TIF money and all that, and suddenly he's doing something where, whether for the right or the wrong reason, he's got a good outcome.
Yeah, well, previously they had proposed that there be an amusement tax TIF essentially used, so they would take some of those amusement taxes and plow them back into Wrigley Field that were generated from the area. But in this time of tight budget constraints, it just really wasn't selling very well, and you're going to give the billionaire Ricketts you know, tens of millions of dollars to help them renovate their stadium. Why should the citizens of Chicago do that? So the mayor was looking into it, and there was a possibility that he could structure it in a way and explain it away and say, well, look, it's only the increment. It wouldn't exist if they didn't improve the stadium.
Almost like a TIF, but kind of like a...
Yeah, very, very much. Same concept. But they needed bond houses to back that, and if the bond houses were to back that, they need backing from the state, because they wouldn't rely solely on the amusement tax, or the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority, which really wasn't in a position to do this. So that just died, and the mayor was probably glad to see it go, because then he doesn't have to deal with trying to explain this. And he said, find a way to do it yourself. We'll try and find a way for you to make more revenue there. And in order for them to do that, there's the landmarks ordinance, because Wrigley is a historic structure, maybe the most prominent historic structure in the city. And so we can maybe relax those rules and get you a way to make revenue so that you can fund this all by yourself. Well, it's not that simple.
Because it's Wrigleyville.
You're right, exactly.
And it is Wrigley Field.
And it's Wrigley Field, right. Yeah. And we have this really weird historic anomaly of these businesses that are all around the edge of the park that use their roofs, and they have a powerful alderman on their side, right, with Tom Tunney?
They've evidently paid him a lot of money, and he wants to hold the line as well. But you know, I think at the same time, you know, from the ballpark, from the aspect of fans, you do want to maintain those sight lines. I mean, that's why Wrigley Field has always had that intimate relationship with the community. Is that it's right there when you're in the grandstand, and I can remember sitting behind a couple people who were in the Cubs media relations department in the early '80s, back in the day when the press box was hanging underneath the upper deck, and them saying, we've got to put an upper deck out there on the bleachers, and it was, you know, thank God that people stopped them from doing that, because it just would ruin the ballpark. So that's what you're trying to prevent.
But part of this new plan, of course, includes signs that would go above the bleachers, so you're ruining that kind of view that you're talking about. The other thing that complicates this, and you're right, it is an anomaly, these rooftops, but the anomaly is enshrined in a 20-year contract entered to in 2004, where the Cubs agreed to let them, continue to operate the rooftops. They wouldn't block them, and they'd give them 17%. The Cubs would get 70% of the revenue that the rooftop owners made, and they turned around and invested tens of millions of dollars in these buildings, and the contract's still running. So there's this whole contract.
That contract is 20 years?
It is 20
Oh, I
years.
didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And there may be a dispute, and I think there is a dispute brewing about exactly what it says. Does it say you can't block their views, or what exactly does it say? It's a private contract. No one has gotten their hands on that.
Oh, okay.
So
that wasn't a city ordinance then. That was just a deal between these guys and the Cubs.
That's right. Back around 2003, 2004, the Cubs were talking about putting up screens that would have.
They did for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did for a short period of time, didn't they? Yeah. And so it led to this contract negotiation. So I think you're going to see some debate about. There's some talk that the rooftop owners could put up their own signs, and the Cubs wouldn't have to block their views, and the Cubs could get the revenue. And you're going to see, I think, all kinds of proposals coming out. And then the Landmarks Commission is going to have to approve whatever they do, like they did with the Toyota sign that everyone loves so much.
Yeah.
And there's really nobody for the fan to root for on either side, because those are cash cows as well. Those buildings that they. I mean, I lived in one of those buildings before.
Did you?
Corporate ownership. Yeah, and that was great, and that was the real days when we had
when you just go up on the roof.
Roaches in the apartments.
You just take a chair up on the roof, and it's your own private.
That's
roof.
right. Now they're all just
and
cash cows.
Did you have to give 17% to the Cubs?
No, we never did. But I think it would have been paid in beer money. At the time.
Yeah. But there's a phenomenon that we've seen over and over and over again with the Rahm Emanuel administration, where I always just I fantasize about being in the meetings where they're actually cutting the deals and working this out, and thinking, I can just imagine Rahm sitting down with guys from the Cubs and saying, look, you are never going to get the changes to the park. The Landmark Commission is not going to do this. Can we use the language that
he would use?
Well, you can if you want. I was cleaning it up a little bit. But essentially, he would say, you don't have a chance of making this happen. But if
he was adamant yesterday, saying they asked for $300 million, I said no. They asked for $250, I said no. They asked for $200, I said no. They said for $150, I said no. So when they finally got to nothing, I said, but that at the same time, that's sort of like it compels him now that the city does have to come across with some.
Well, this is the other half of the thing that I'm saying is I can just hear him saying to them, but you put the $300 million on the table, which you can afford. Don't give me this. You can afford it. Then you put me in the position where I'm going to have to, light a fire under the Landmarks people to get out of the way and let you have whatever you want. I mean, I think that's a very interesting deal. I'm not sure.
And Tunney's not going to right now is holding the line on that. I mean, the Cubs are also saying they want unlimited night games, and Tunney's saying no. And I think probably it's not just money there. I think that's a legitimate concern for the neighborhood, because
huge issue.
It's completely unlike Sox Park in that it is a huge.
It's a big deal.
It's a caravan from the expressway to the ballpark, and it ties up the whole north side of the city. I guess I missed this, but I had no idea that Tom Tunney was so involved with the rooftop owners. I mean, they've given him a lot of money. You guys have reported.
Yeah, we at the Tribune first reported years ago that he's received, well over $100,000. I think the total now is probably up around $150,000 in campaign contributions from the folks at the rooftops. This goes back to an issue I've been writing about off and on for years of aldermanic privilege. And the alderman holds almost total control traditionally over decisions about zoning and permits and so forth in their own ward. And you find that a lot of money flows into their campaign coffers because people want to have access to that alderman to help influence those decisions. In this case, the big question is, if Tunney can't get everyone to agree. There's a lot of disparate parties here. We can't get the rooftop owners to agree, and the neighbors to agree, and the Cubs to agree.
That's a tough order.
It is. It's very difficult. But if you can't find some way to navigate that, will the mayor then try to force a deal? Will he try to set privilege aside, and it happens, but it happens very rarely. I think the mayor's probably reluctant to do that, which is why he's saying go and work something out.
Work it out, you guys.
Yeah. Why is that? Why Sonny fought the closing of Sheffield and Waveland, which only makes common sense? I think he has opposed that, right?
Well, a lot of neighborhood groups have been.
They want just the drive.
Yeah, and you know, they say that it makes it tough for the businesses that operate. I think the businesses that are along that street say it hurts their business, but I think they could probably work something out there too. You know,
I gotta say that's
you can't exactly drive through there.
I totally get the idea of not wanting more, or at least not a lot more night games. But that thing of closing the immediate streets right around the park doesn't seem to me. I mean,
I agree. There are not that many businesses up along Sheffield there.
That to me is, when you get in that close, then I think you can invoke the O'Hare rule that, you know, you bought this house, you know, a quarter of a mile from O'Hare, don't complain about the jetways, you knew what you were doing, right? So, I mean, the park has been there a lot longer than any of the people who live there have been alive, so, well, anyway. But this actually gives us a nice transition, I think, into this issue of Midway, because we're now, it looks like it's going to be a done deal, right? This Midway thing is going to happen. They're going to sell, or not sell, but what, lease Midway to a private corporation for 40 years or something?
Well, the mayor has asked for requests for proposals and trying to get information from companies about how they might approach it, and then they'd, you know, narrow that list and ask for actual bids at some point. So they're certainly looking into it. They got the FAA's approval to do it. But I think it all depends on how those bids come in. I mean, I think they're certainly leaning that way. But
so the real question for me is, why? Why would you want to privatize Midway? I mean, I just don't understand who benefits other than the corporation that gets the contract and they get to suck a lot of money out of Midway. I mean, for them, it's a great deal. As a citizen, why is it a good deal for me? I mean, Midway, my perception, and I use it a lot, is that Midway runs very well. It's a very good, efficient little airport. It does its job. It's relatively less expensive to use than O'Hare. It's very convenient. The city, as far as I can tell, does a very good job managing Midway. So if they're not getting enough money out of it, maybe they could just say to us, look, we could sell this sucker off to some, you know, Abu Dhabi company, and they would raise the parking rates 3 times. So we're going to raise the parking rates 2 times and keep the money and use it for city benefit. I mean, I just don't get it. I don't.
It's just a matter of efficiency, though. I think. I mean, like this is the same way they did with these with the recent billboards along the expressways. The city admitted that they really don't know how to run the technology and turn it around. And Alderman Porar and amongst others was saying, well, let's learn real quick and do it ourselves. But I think there is something like where, you know, you can turn it in and say, we don't know how to make this maximally efficient. We are a government. There is a bureaucracy, and sometimes it's better to turn it over.
They also free up. Here's something that is maybe harder and deeper into the financial books. A little harder to understand, but first of all, there's more than $1 billion in debt at Midway. That makes it tough for
all the remodeling.
You know, it's good to get for all the work that they did. They made it pretty nice today, right. And so, but you get that debt off the books. It makes, you know, the city able to borrow money to do other things. That's a good point. And you also all the revenue that comes in to Midway is used at Midway. It's all part of the aviation department. And this could not only pay off some debt, but it could bring in a new revenue stream that the mayor ostensibly could divert to other infrastructure projects outside of the airport. So it would give him more financial freedom in terms of what he wants to do throughout the city. So at the same time, I think this deal is a little different from the dreaded parking meter deal, in that airports have been privatized elsewhere in the world. In Europe, they're doing it in Puerto Rico now, I think, and it's been very successful. It hasn't. you know, yeah, there's been slightly higher prices, but I think people sort of expect to get ripped off going to the airport, and you know, and it is people have not complained nearly as loudly, and he's talking about a Bill of Rights and more control over this, and it's not something where you're selling food. Yeah, there's parking prices, but you're not, as in the parking meter, it doesn't affect city policy, where you want to be able to make traffic flow. You want
encourage development in areas. Yeah,
right. It's not nearly as
and there has been it's moved at a glacial pace. This goes back to the Daley administration,
it does,
right?
yeah.
And so they've they're at least looking at this one over. They're not ramming it through.
Well, but also, in fairness, some of it just happened because of the economy. If the economy
Right.
hadn't tanked, it would have been
Right.
done years ago, I
well,
think.
well, they actually had a deal.
They did, right.
Yeah, it was a done deal, and then
Right.
the economy tanked. They couldn't get the financing.
Right.
The city actually got like $100 million payment out of that. That worked out fairly well in the short run.
Let's do that again.
It's an ill wind that blows no one good. I guess I'm just really dense, and I admit that. That's part of why I'm a talk show host, because you're not supposed to understand these things. But I still don't get it. I still don't get why it wouldn't be better for the city that owns a terrific asset to run that asset, manage that asset, and get the money out of it, instead of giving it to somebody else to run it and then getting a little bit of money from them. But
no, I think that's a worthwhile debate.
We'll hear that in the council too, I'm sure.
And it's certainly probably everyone agrees now might have been the much better way to approach the parking meters.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's, I guess that's the ghost in the corner of the room that haunts us all, because absolutely we already owned the parking meters. We already had an infrastructure for operating the parking meters. It wasn't working very well, maybe, but so what? We could have fixed it. We could have made it better, but we all know that thing. Ted, I wanted to have you come on the program, radically changing subject here, because I think it was almost like in the beginning, the very first issues of DNA Info, you had a series of a couple of stories about how the fire department quietly goes about the business of picking bullet-riddled people up off the streets and patching them back together and rushing them to the hospitals, where, of course, we know we probably have some of the best MASH units in the world working right now. But that if you sort of take the helicopter view of this, we had 500 plus murders last year, whatever it was, 508, 510, whatever the number was. But
I think it was 506, right?
Yeah, something like that. The number is disputed, but But the point is that what would that number have been if the fire department weren't out there, and the hospitals and the emergency rooms, patching these people back together again? We might have had 600, 700 murders last year.
Yeah, it was a story that nobody was telling, because it's through various things. No, well, first of all, the city doesn't want to. I mean, they're already dealing with the 500 deaths. That's bad enough publicity. You don't want to say, "Hey, we're saving 1,500 people who also got shot."
It's a really ironic position for the city to be in.
It's a hard feel-good story to tell, but it is a feel-good story, and it is something where they have done pretty miraculous things. I mean, it's not like it was in the Wild West days of the early '90s. I mean, citywide, but still, they're saving a lot of lives. It could be a lot worse. As one of the guys said, that if we were as depleted, I mean, you're back and forth with the unions and the city. But if we were as down as the police department is, it could have been, if we were saving 500 and 1,500 were dead. But yeah, it was an untoward story, and also because of evidently when they drop people off at a hospital, they cannot keep tabs on whether they live or not because of federal medical regulations on privacy. So because nobody wanted to keep track of the story, and because in many ways they had their hands tied as far as being able to tell the story, it was a hard one to tell. But our best estimate was that it was about 1,500 lives that they'd saved.
That's remarkable. That's just absolutely amazing.
And that was at the end of October, I think. So that was still like 2 months to go. In the
well, I mean, I just saw this morning, in fact, on DNA Info, I saw the Conkle story this morning that the police department says that last year there were 1,893 people in Chicago who were shot and wounded. So whatever that means, I mean, that could mean anything from almost dead to, you know, grazing, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
and there was one fire department official who said that his best estimate was that the fire department treats about 90% of the people that get shot. I mean, you have occasional people where somebody gets driven to a hospital
or try to drive themselves.
Exactly.
Right.
But for the most part, they're handling most of those.
And of course, there's tragically a lot of these people who get patched up, go back out on the street and get shot again, or shoot, or whatever the situation. But I just found that so intriguing to think about. It's kind of this hidden story that you don't piece together with the bigger story of how many people are being shot and killed all the time.
And there are a lot of quiet behind the scenes things that go on too, as far as there are now, I forget what the name of the program is, but there are firefighters trained to be paramedics as well. So they're both firefighters and paramedics, and so they can switch back and forth to from an ambulance to an engine, and so enable the medical treatment of somebody on the way to the hospital.
Well, I mean, this is there are so many layers of irony in all of this, because we're about to see the negotiations start with the fire department, and that's going to be pretty explosive when that happens, because I know Mayor Emanuel has already said that there are lots of hidden costs in the fire department that he wants to go after, and he's questioning whether the staffing levels need to be at the height that they are. But
you would think that he would have learned something from this teacher strike, because I mean, like, I think probably there is even more public support for firefighters than there is for teachers, and you know, you can't play hardball.
Well, I mean, I know the strife that happened in the fire department 10-15 years ago when they started the ALS, BLS ambulances, advanced life versus basic life support ambulances, and that they wanted cross-training, and the firefighters didn't want to do it, and I think that is kind of resolving itself now. But I mean, as we've observed on this show before, the Chicago Fire Department is now basically a medical service that fights fires. I mean, they do far more medical work than they do firefighting.
And they want to do more. I haven't been able to tell the story because the first person I was talking with was like, this is only for background and not for attribution. But there are people. I mean, there are people in the department that say that there's a lot of new technology coming out of the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan that they want to be able to use, and that they've actually seen SWAT teams use, and they want to have access to that, and so they can make the case as far as, you know, I don't think that's a union decision, but it's something where, like, they say we could use more money.
And I know, Hal, you've said that some of this is kind of like a parallel to what we're seeing in the military.
Yeah, I wonder about that, if there wouldn't be a lot more deaths if the medical advances hadn't been made in the last 10 or 15 years, and we wouldn't start approaching some of those horrific numbers back from the 70s.
The Vietnam era numbers because of advances.
Right, both Vietnam and then the number in deaths in the city back then too, you know, when they were well above.
And see, that's the other thing that's so interesting about it, is that we talk about these, how the rates today they're bad, but they're not as bad as they were in the 70s. But this didn't exist. This fire department, this sort of MASH mentality didn't exist in the 70s.
And the record keeping was just completely different. They didn't even keep track of shootings back then. It was assaults and with a weapon, and that included, you know, threatening with a gun, as far as so there was just no way to tell who, you know, how many wounded were there.
And again,
but it does seem a lot more, both in the 90s and the 70s.
But it's just the richness of the irony that the city of Chicago is doing something. They have a service that is being, as far as we can tell, is just brilliantly running. It's a wonderful, amazing service that the city is providing, but it doesn't really want to brag about it too much, because it's masking this other thing.
Can you see the mayor standing up and he said, "You think a lot of people died? Look at how many we saved."
Right. Think how many it would be if it weren't for our great fire department.
Well, you know, they have compounded that, the overall crime drop again and again and again. And it's even like when, even though we got all these murders, our overall crime is dropping.
Right. Shootings haven't dropped, and nor have murders.
Right. So can we talk a little bit about Sandy Jackson? That was a cute little story that broke the other day when she. Stop me if I'm wrong about this, but she didn't even come to town to say goodbye to everybody, right?
No,
she just kind of called in.
She called a meeting last week of her supporters, a lot of precinct captains, community people in the neighborhood at her ward office. And the last day she was in office, I think it was last Wednesday, because she retired, of course, because of the controversy swirling around her and her husband. And so she gets everyone in the room, and they start asking about, who do you think will be appointed? And she says, but she's not there. Just like you say, she was supposed to be there, but they had to turn on the phone, and she said
she phoned it in.
Yeah, she phoned it in. She said, and by the way, I'm driving, but I'll just drive slowly. I can talk while I'm driving. So I don't know if she was driving in D.C. or she was driving in Chicago, on the way there or back. I have no idea, but she's driving, and she says, the mayor, will make a show of, taking names from the community, and then he usually appoints, of course this mayor's never appointed anyone yet, we don't know what this mayor will do, but Daley, in most cases appointed the person recommended by the outgoing alderman. In this case, I think the word from the mayor's office is, we're probably not going to want anyone that had any relationship with the Jacksons because right or wrong, that's perceived as too toxic right now. And we're probably not going to want anyone that had any relation to Commissioner William Beavers, the former alderman whose daughter was alderman for a short period of time, because he's under indictment, as a commissioner in Cook County. And
that does leave a power vacuum in the ward.
It does.
So he says he's going to, he's in classic Rahm style, he's put it online, right? You can apply online.
He has made it clear he wants somebody with a community background, but we'll see. This will,
He did say that Sandy was welcome to go online and make a suggestion.
Like anybody else.
We have no recording of how she reacted to that.
But I'm going to have to say, though, that this is nothing new. After there were Freedom of Information Act requests filed against Daley when he was considering alderman, I forget, I think it might have been to replace Carruthers when it was, and they picked Deborah Graham. But at that time, the mayor in the next couple appointments did put it online. So Daley did this exact same thing. I don't think
I'd forgotten that.
And I don't think this process is any more transparent than what Mayor Daley did the last.
But at the same time, though, he was not above like putting Darcel Beavers in when Bill Beavers moved to the county board. So.
Well, but we don't know what this mayor is going to do. Is talk about, if Alderman Mel retires, that Deborah Mel might.
Well, it'd be very interesting. We're out of time, but that would be the most interesting thing of all, wouldn't it? If there was a transparent process in the 7th, and then when Mel retires, they just give it to Deb Mel. That would. Where's
You can do that transparently.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it is transparent. We're giving it to Deb.
That's it's still about the clout.
Ted, it was great having you here. I hope you'll come back again sometime.
For sure.
Thanks. Ted Cox is with DNA Info, and of course our old buddy Hall Dardick here from the Chicago Tribune, City Hall reporter. Glad to have you both here. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It is a production of CAN TV. I'm clearing my throat because it's 41 degrees in here. We want to get out and get out into the warm. You can check us out right here at this check at this address right here if you'd like to watch a show anytime. I'm Ken Davis saying thanks for watching, and don't forget iTunes. You can get the podcast there. We'll see you next time on Chicago Newsroom. Bye.